Hey guys, I hope this finds everybody doing really well. Let me just say that I miss you all a ton. Um, it's been crazy around this house. We have just been playing a bunch of Uno. We have cleaned up our rooms. We have cleaned up our closets. We have done puzzles. I've done tons of schoolwork. If you guys think your teachers are not working, I'm telling you right now that is incorrect because we are doing tons of work, which I hear some of you guys are too, but let me just make it clear, it should not be more than 30 minutes a day per class. So if the math takes you longer than 30 minutes, don't let it take you that long. So just stop, make it reasonable because this is not supposed to be overwhelming for anyone. So just keep that in mind. Also, I got a joke for you guys. Okay, y'all know I like corny jokes. So this one, so what does the CDC recommend, or what kind of jokes does the CDC recommend we tell during this quarantine? You ready? Inside jokes. Ha! Inside. Yeah, I cracked myself up with that one. So yeah. All right, we're gonna get this show on the road. So let's see here. What we're gonna focus on today is I'm gonna look at, let's see here, some of the problems that were most commonly missed on the test from Friday. Now, if you did not take the test on Friday, you can still go in and do it. It's still there. Or I'm also going to give a retake opportunity on Thursday. Now, don't be stressed out about your grades at all. It is what it is right now, and nothing is going to count against you. So just do your best on this stuff. If you do great, like I said, that's good. That tells me that we can keep moving on. But if we don't do so well, I'll just need to do some review. So just do what you can. But those of you who didn't do so well or you want a chance to do better, we're going to review Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll kind of do a really short retake. When I say short, it's like 10 questions on Thursday. So let's see, the questions that you see here, or the graphs that you see, they're all line plots, also called dot plots. Really the same exact thing. So basically, there were 5 problems that were missed by quite a few people on the test out of, well, 20 questions. And the 5 questions that were most commonly missed are the ones I'm going to go over today. The first 3 are all dealing with the shape of your data. So that tells me we definitely needed some more review with that. So I think it was problem number 8 on your test. It looked like this right here. And the question that you guys had on that asked you, okay, so that question asked you about the shape of your data, and it asked you which one of these was true about the data. These were your choices, A, B, C, and D. So looking at this data, it asked if it was skewed to the left. That is not skewed to the left. And basically what skew means is if you had a set of data, let's say, that looks somewhat like this here, okay? This right here is symmetrical data, okay? Symmetric or symmetrical, because it's pretty evenly distributed. It's about the same on each side. If I had a set of data that looked more like this right here, I would say that this is skewed right, because it looks kind of like there is a tail to my data to the right. If I had a set of data that looked like this here, I would say that this is skewed left, because again, it looks kind of like there's a tail to the data that goes to the left. So the tail is kind of where you have less of your data. So in this case, more of my data is clustered to the left, so it's skewed to the right. On this graph, more of the data is clustered to the right, so I would say it's skewed to the left. So your tail of the data is the direction of the skew. So if I look at the pizza slices eaten right here, it is not skewed to the left, because again, skewed to the left would mean you have a lot of data to the right and a tail to the left. So that's not correct. Cluster at 4 and 5. Well, cluster is just what it sounds like. Like out of the math world, if you hear the word cluster, it just means a group of something. In fact, a lot of cereals have like there's raisin clusters or oatmeal clusters or whatever. So that just means like groups or clumps. Or so if I look at 4 and 5, there's not a cluster there. I would say maybe there's a cluster between 1 and 3, because I have a lot of data grouped between 1 and 3. but there is no cluster at 4 and 5, so that was not true. It also said there's no gap. Well, a gap is, again, outside of the math world, it's just what it sounds like. A gap is like a hole where you have nothing there. So in this case, if I look at this data, there is no gap, okay? Let's say I took out the data at 4 and there was nothing there, then I would say there's a gap at 4, but there's no gap here. And I would not consider 0 to be a gap because it's not in between anything else. All right, so that was true. So that should have been your answer. The other choice was a peak at 5. Well, if I look at 5, that's not my peak. Again, think outside of the math world, the peak is like the top of the mountain. Same thing with your graph. The peak would be at the top. In this case, you would say the peak would be 1 and 3, and it's also, the peak would also be the same as the mode. So you can see here that the peak is not at 5, okay? All right, the number of pets, there was a graph that looked just like this one, and that question asked you if the data was skewed left, skewed right, or symmetric. Well, if you look at this, let's see, if I draw kind of like, you can see there's kind of a tail to the right side. So I would say that this was skewed to the right. Okay, so that's what skew is. Again, it's where you have less of your data. There's a tail to your data. So that's skewed right. Another problem that you guys missed looks just like this dot plot right here. In fact, this dot plot was used on 2 of the ones that were commonly missed. So we'll look at both of them. All right, so one of the problems, again, dealing with this dot plot, asked you which one of these is true. And so again, it's about the shape of the data. Well, the first choice said you have an outlier at 10. Well, if I look at this, yes, there is an outlier at 10. Remember, an outlier, just what it sounds like, and it lies outside of the rest of the data. It's a number that's either a lot more than or a lot less than everything else. And in this case, 10 is an outlier. So yes, that was true. But anytime you're dealing with a multiple choice question, you always want to read through every single answer choice. So let's look at B. It says there's a gap from 6 to 9. Well, if I look at between 6 and 9, sure enough, I see a gap there. Okay, there's a space there where there's no data, so that is true. There's a peak at 1. Well, if I look, the very highest top point, okay, is at 1, so that is also true. So your answer should have been all of the above. All of those were true. All right, the other question that was missed dealt with the same dot plot, and it asked you about, okay, so that particular question that we missed asked about the mean of the data. Well, we know how to find the mean. We add all the numbers together and then divide by how many there are. But what you have to remember with a dot plot or line plot is that each dot represents the number that it's above. So in other words, when I look at 0 on this, I see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. So if I were to list out my data, I have 0, 0, 0, 0, and 0. I have 5 of them. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ones. So I'm going to list those out also. Okay, I've got 4 2s, a 3, 2 4s, a 5, and a 10. So I'm going to need to add all of those values together and then divide by how many numbers I have in all. Okay, I got a sum of 41 when I added all of those numbers together. And then I need to divide by how many numbers there are. Well, again, each dot represents a different number. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way and so on. I've got 21 in all. So to get my answer, I have to divide 41 divided by 21, okay? And the answer we're going to get there, and by the way, the answer also, or the question said approximate, meaning it's close, not exactly. So then the answer I get is 1 and 95/100. Now this is a good lesson too, and just looking at what's reasonable and what's not, because if you look at what the other answer choices were, the other answer choices you had were 1 and 48/100, 1 and 95/100, and it was like 2 and 56/100. Well, it couldn't have been 1. That wouldn't have made sense. Once you got your total of 41 and you knew you're dividing by 21. If you just rounded, that's about 2. So this is the only one that would have really even made sense. Okay. All right, and then so the very last part that you guys missed on the test involved box plots. And the main things you need to remember with this, because you guys did great with identifying like the minimum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, maximum. You did great with identifying those 5 values. What we struggled with were finding the IQR, okay, which stands for interquartile range. All right, range we know means to subtract the highest minus the lowest, but the difference is that with the IQR, you're finding the range of just the box. So you find basically the highest point on the box, which is Q3, and the lowest point on the box, which is Q1, and you subtract those. So to find the IQR, again, it's just the range of the box. For instance, if I was looking at this example right here, my IQR would be, again, Q3 minus Q1. Well, Q3 is at about 7.5, and Q1 is at 4. So I would subtract 7.5 minus 4. Well, I know if I'm subtracting decimals, I have to line up the decimals. So I'm going to add in a decimal 0 behind the 4, and that would give me 3.5. So that would say that the IQR of this box is 3.5. The other thing with box plots is understanding that each section of the box plot represents 25% of your data. So if I were to ask you, based on this box plot, what percent of the data is 4 or less? Okay, 4 is right here, 4 or less. The numbers are getting smaller on the number line toward the left. So 25% of my data is 4 or less. Or I could also ask, say, what percent is 5 or more? Well, 5 is right here at the median. So 5 or more would be a total of, that's 2 25s, so that's 50%. If I asked what percent was 4 or above, okay, that's 3 sections on my box plot, so that would be 75%. So that was the other thing we kind of struggled with a bit on the test. All right, so just to recap what we've talked about here, when we're talking about the shape of the data, remember we're looking for things like an outlier, which in this case is over here at 10, okay? Gap in the data is right here at 10 and, or sorry, 20 and 30, because there's no data, there's a gap there. There's a cluster around 90 to 100 because there's quite a lot of data right there. And honestly, with a cluster, I could even say maybe between like 70 and 100 or 60 and 100. There's a lot of data right in here, so that's a cluster. There's a peak, which is at 90. And again, the peak is going to be the same as the mode because it's the highest point on the graph, which is going to be where the most data is. And then this would be skewed to the left because it's like you have like a tail to your data to the left. So that was just kind of an overview of the shape that we missed on the test. And then of course, box plots that we talked about. And I hope that helped you guys. If not, of course, send me an email, send me a comment on the forum, and I will talk to you guys later. Love you.